while he's here, you know what? Let's arrest Putin. There's an arrest warrant for him from the International Criminal Court. Sure, we're not a member country because, well, Trump and his co-conspirator dictatorship are criminals. That would be awkward. And whether you want to call it collusion or conspiracy or simple ownership, Putin still runs Trump. But while he's here, let's arrest Vladimir Putin. The 125 member states of the International Criminal Court have been looking to put Putin away, most recently for kidnapping thousands of Ukrainian children and forcing them to speak Russian and pretending they are without homes or they've been abandoned or they're refugees. Literally the sick joke about killing the parents and then claiming what's left over is orphans. The 125 member states that have a series of arrest warrants for Russia's monsters for all kinds of war crimes in Ukraine include the rest of our continent. Canada and Mexico. I mean, it's not going to happen, but it sure would be nice to see the Canadian military move across its border into Alaska and take Putin. Who knows? Maybe Vladimir would hide behind Trump as a human shield. You have to admit, Trump would make a giant double XL human shield. Finally, something useful. Of course, Trump is already a giant double XL human shield for Putin, figuratively. You will recall it was Trump who did nothing as Putin and Russia became ensconced in Crimea and the Donbass during Trump's first junta. You will recall Trump's asinine campaign promise to settle Russia's invasion of Ukraine in one day. I believe we're at 204 different one days since. Since seizing power again, Trump has given Putin 2 weeks to observe a ceasefire. When Putin ignored that, Trump gave him another 2 weeks. Then he said he was disappointed in Putin. Then he gave him 50 more days. Then he said he wondered if Putin was lying to him or what had happened to Putin. Then he gave him 10 days. Then when those 10 days ran out, he offered to meet with Putin. Not Putin and Zelensky, just Putin. And when the small problem of where to meet came up, Putin would be arrested in nearly all of those 125 ICC member nations. Trump volunteered our house. Alaska. This asshole lies to Trump about Ukraine 5 times that we know of. And Trump responds by inviting this butcher, this would-be Stalin, into our country. Unless you brought him here to drop 20 tons of shit on his head, F you, Trump. Also, Trump's special envoy dealing with Russia is either a moron or deliberately stalling for Putin, or both. This is that clown Witkoff, not that clown Lutnick or that clown Huckabee or that clown Kellogg or that clown Vance. The German news outlet Bild reports that Witkoff is such a nitwit that when he met with Putin, Putin demanded as a starting point for any ceasefire negotiations, the starting point, that Ukrainian forces be withdrawn from those parts of Ukraine Putin falsely claims are his. Witkoff promptly decided that what Putin had said was he was offering to withdraw Russian forces from those parts of Ukraine. Honest to God. Life in prison? I thought you said life out of prison. The Wall Street Journal has since confirmed this German report. In fact, Witkoff has now told at least 3 different versions of the phony Ukraine peace deal from Russia, 1 or 2 or all 3 of which are the nonsensical basis for inviting this scumbag Putin here to our country without a plan to detain him. Here's what Murdoch's paper wrote. Quote, the European counterproposal concludes a week of frantic diplomacy triggered by Putin's overture to Witkoff. Hours after the 2 men met at the Kremlin, Trump summoned a call with select European leaders and Zelensky to brief them on the proposal. On the call, Trump suggested that Russia would be ready to withdraw from the southern region of Zaporizhia and Kherson in exchange for full control of Donetsk. That's the first version. However, here comes the second version. Witkoff walked back that claim the next day in a call with the chief aides of European leaders, suggesting that Russia would both withdraw and freeze the front line. It's two different things. The third one, on Friday, European officials demanded a third call with Witkoff to clarify the growing confusion about what Putin actually proposed. In that call, Witkoff clearly stated that the only offer on the table was for Ukraine to withdraw unilaterally from Donetsk in exchange for a ceasefire. Vance, Rubio, and Kellogg attended some of the calls, which is, of course, the same thing as Vance, Rubio, and Kellogg not attending any of the calls. There are a lot of stupid people working with Donald Trump. He surrounds himself with the best of the stupid people. In fact, he looks for people who are stupider than he is. To paraphrase Rodney Dangerfield, if you want to look smart, surround yourself with a bunch of Witkoffs, Vances, Rubios, and Kellogg's. But Witkoff may be the stupidest. Outstanding work. Trump, a moron, actually found to negotiate for him, to negotiate for us, theoretically to negotiate for Ukraine, an even bigger moron. And based on this guy's moronity, we are admitting Putin to this country. Hey, call that Hitler guy. See if he wants to come too. By the way, Putin actually did offer a concession in these negotiations. Not to Ukraine, not to achieve peace, but he offered a concession to Trump. And what is that concession? To meet him in Alaska. To go to Alaska. Going to Alaska is the concession. Alaska, or as the Russians call it, Russian America. That's the win he's giving to Trump. To condescend to come to our country and not get arrested. Because he knows Trump desperately needs something he can pretend is a win, a triumph, a deal, statesmanship, something other than Epstein. So when this meeting happens and Putin pitches something like, who knows, Ukraine is just erased from all maps tomorrow. And Trump endorses it because Trump so desperately wants a Nobel Peace Prize, or as Karoline Leavitt calls it,
the Nobel Peace Prize.
Trump will endorse anything that might get a Nobel Peace Prize for him. When Trump endorses it and Zelensky rejects it, Trump will start hating Zelensky again and blaming him. Because this is about Trump getting a prize. He hosted Azerbaijan and Armenia last week because he wants a prize. He doesn't know what an Azerbaijan is. He just wants a prize. A major prize. A major prize, like the father in the movie A Christmas Story wanted a major prize. He just wants a major prize. A nice glowing mesh stocking leg lamp to put in his window. The Nobel Leg Prize. I take back what I said about arresting Putin while he's here. Arrest Putin and Trump and this buffoon Witkoff. Oh, and Karoline Leavitt, too, the idiot. So the vice president is covering up a secret conspiracy meeting that was held to cover up the secret conspiracy Trump cover-up of Trumpstein. Got it. You will recall that somebody leaked that Vance was supposed to host, Vance evidently taking a day off from his exhausting schedule of back-to-back-to-back vacations, Vance was supposed to host for dinner at the vice president's residence last Wednesday White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, Attorney General Blondie, FBI Director Keep Your Eye on the Ball Patel, and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche visibly to discuss the ongoing Trump-Epstein crisis, specifically what to do with the tape and the transcript of Trump's first deal with Ghislaine Maxwell, where he flew Todd Blanche to her prison cell, and Blanche gave her immunity for 2 days, and then presto changeo, she wound up being moved from that prison cell to a club-fed jail camp in Texas. Release the tape? Burn the tape? Claim the tape is missing a minute? Do something about whatever crisis it presented, depending on whatever it was that Maxwell revealed about Trump or threatened Trump with or whatever during that meeting? Vance and the others immediately denied there was such a meeting. It was fake news. They lied. It now turns out that to make it technically not a lie, they had the dinner all right with all those people and talked about Epstein. They just did not have it at the vice president's residence at the Naval Observatory. They moved it to the White House. That way, when they said it, they sure as hell were not meeting about Epstein at Vance's residence. They weren't lying. They were meeting about Epstein at Trump's residence. We still don't know what happened, except for the fact that the lead has been buried by those who broke that story, and then those who broke that story that the venue was changed, and by those few news organizations that have brought it up since. The lead is why were Vance, Wiles, Bondi, Patel, and Blanche meeting about Epstein, about Ghislaine Maxwell, without Trump being there? Where was Trump? Why would they meet about Epstein and not have Trump there? Because whether there's a picture of Trump on every page of the Epstein files, or there's literally sworn testimony in them from every victim saying Trump was not involved, the Trump conspiratorial mob's interest in the Epstein case is Trump. Period. So it wasn't like he wasn't there because he was golfing at sunset. We are all left speculating. Seems to me pretty clear they needed to figure out what to do about Trump whenever whatever was in the files or whatever was in Maxwell's conversations with Blanche got out, or how to keep it from getting out, or how to keep Trump from finding out, or who to get in as the new president if what was in there about Trump was really, really bad. I mean, it's a cover-up. It's obviously a cover-up. That's not a conclusion. Trump keeps saying it's a cover-up. He keeps saying he has to protect people who would be hurt by the truth. He meanders around that basic line, but that's what he's saying again and again. We can't release it because innocent people may be hurt. Innocent meaning him and his relatives. That is the definition of a cover-up. We have the information. We're not going to tell you. Cover up. Let's talk cover up. Make sure Trump is not there. Why not? Well, the cover up is about him. Happily, just as those of us still paying attention to Trumpstein were worrying that it might be losing steam as a news story, here comes J.V. Vance, not on vacation for the second time in a week. What, is there an asteroid about to hit the Earth? J.V. Vance goes on Maria Bartiromo's Sunday Fox show, and by the way, he's wearing more makeup and eyeliner than she is. And she wears a lot. And how in the hell has he gotten away with this for a year as the number 2 person in the let's kill all the drag queens party? I mean, I'm opposed to this. I have nothing against drag queens. But at some point, are any of these cultists going to come down from whatever drug they are all high on? We hate drag queens. Hey, what's that on Vance's face? Anyway, JV goes on with Bartiromo and says, quote, "We know that Jeffrey Epstein had a lot of connections with left-wing politicians and left-wing billionaires. Democrat billionaires and Democrat political leaders went to Epstein Island all the time. Who knows what they did?" Which raises 2 points, JV. One, if that's how you read it, boy, why haven't you released the files? If this is a treasure trove of details about Democrat billionaires and left-wing billionaires and Democrat political leaders and left-wing politicians going to Epstein Island and who knows what they did, isn't this the kind of stuff you MAGA scum make sure goes public? Even when it doesn't really exist? Why are you suddenly covering up for them? The second point, of course, is that throughout the Epstein era, one of those left-wing politician, left-wing billionaire, Democratic political leaders, registered Democrats was Donald Trump. Oh, I get it. That second point I just made there, that explains my first point. That's yeah, okay. What we are seeing is clearly the outcome of dinner with JV and Susie Wiles. When Trump does something new, suddenly, irrationally. That's my next item about this nutso demand that the homeless move out of D.C. Thank you for your attention to this matter, because all homeless people have the Truth Social app. When he does something out of the blue, there's always something in the background that has actually just thrown him. Something so big that it got through that haze of mirrors that he holds around his own face so he can always see how handsome and beautiful he is. Now, this could be a YouGov poll for The Economist showing that his approval among conservatives, while still wildly above water, is not as wildly above water as it was just a month ago. He was a net plus 80 among conservatives in July, and he's a net plus 65 in August. Reading conservative poll numbers is always a risky business, but a lot of poll analysts look at the interior numbers in this YouGov Economist poll, and they see most of his slippage coming over the brutality of ICE and, much more significantly, about how they're handling Epstein. Epstein? Epstein who? Mr. Cotter, I know who. Net plus 65 is net plus 65. But if he loses that much support among conservatives every month, an admittedly crazy idea by itself, but if he loses 15 points a month, by January, he would be underwater among conservatives at -5. So dropping 15 points in a month is not a big one, but it's an iceberg. That's what Susie and JV were meeting about. Because if he drops 5 points among conservatives every month, by next November, he'll be at -10 among conservatives. And guess what next November is? No? It rhymes with Schmid-Schmerms. Trump is obviously in the Epstein files the way Gatsby is in The Great Gatsby. So you release none of it. But you keep saying, maybe you will. And when you do, it'll implicate Nick Carraway. And especially that Meyer Wolfsheim guy. Trump tried to spend his weekend teasing a big press conference for today about seizing control of the District of Columbia, but of course he couldn't shut up. As I hinted earlier, that's his big surprise, to try to break your attention from Epstein and the disaster that is his mishandling of Ukraine. But by yesterday, we knew it was going to be an attempt to sweep up the homeless and any suspected criminals, like the trash left over from the birthday parade Trump threw for himself in Washington. And speaking of which, you want to sweep up criminals in D.C., Don? Hope you start with the Trump cabinet and your family. The first slime who should be rounded up is Howard Lutnick, the impossibly skilled Trump ass-kisser. Howard used to be a sympathetic figure. Cantor Fitzgerald was his firm. He was chairman. 658 of his employees died on 9/11 and thereafter, including 2 of my college classmates. He helped organize fundraising, recovery, care for the families, treatment for the 9/11 cancer victims. Now what they'll write on his tombstone was, he kissed the ass of a dictator. who just cut $64 million in federal funding for terrorism prevention funding in New York City. Howard, you've apparently forgotten this now that you found a new life lying on television in service of the devil, but New York City is where Cantor Fitzgerald and the World Trade Center was. I do have a practical suggestion about Trump's planned treatment of the homeless in D.C., which may turn out to rival Putin's treatment of the stray dogs in Sochi during the 2014 Winter Olympics. This monstrous 90,000 square foot pile of shit Trump plans to put next to the White House, then spray it with gold plate and call it a ballroom. Let's move all the homeless in there. Although I can understand if they are reluctant to go in because of the Rust-Oleum 7710830 that Trump has now sprayed on everything in the area, including Melania. Just because one is homeless does not mean one ceases to have taste and standards, which would invariably be better than Donald Trump's. And then there's the most underrated story and most underrated villain of 2025, Columbia University and my former friend and colleague, its co-chair and acting president, Claire Neville Chamberlain Shipman. Her cowardice, her university's cowardice, has inspired cowardice copycats everywhere in academia. Everything you ever thought bad about a teacher or a professor, turns out they went into the management of our major universities. Trump is now trying to find a way to invalidate patents held by Harvard because this is a dictatorship. And he wants $1 billion from UCLA, or he will cut off research grants to UCLA because this is a dictatorship. And he has now gotten Penn to cancel its equal opportunity scholarships because this is a dictatorship. On the other hand, as usual, it is the students at these places showing most of the guts. The newspaper, the Stanford Daily, is suing the Trump administration. Stanford is not suing. The newspaper run by the students, the Stanford Daily, is suing the Trump administration over its use of immigration laws to target and deport pro-Palestinian activists. Because international students on the staff of the Stanford Daily are turning down news assignments related to the war on Gaza or, quote, seeking removal of their previous articles about it. The lawyers for the student paper say the government is actively and retroactively violating the First Amendment. Unlike the people they pay their money to and are supposed to learn from, they are doing something. I'll say it again. You know what would have stopped this particular thing about academia if when Trump first aimed symbolic rocket launchers at Columbia and at his own alma mater, Penn, if Penn had said, "You go, girl," and then announced it was withdrawing Trump's degree from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Or if Penn had merely announced that Trump's degree was now under review. A review that will take several years because of irregularities discovered in the admissions office records of the time, which they had just found while looking for DEI stuff at Penn. And you know what else? If Penn did that now, we're reviewing Trump's degree. It will take till the year 2036. If Penn did that now, it would completely push Trump and his multiple assholes back on their heels. Today. Ultimately, of course, we're still going to have to defund the federal government. That might wait till after the midterms, but at minimum, going to have to do it no later than January 21, 2026. We have to starve Trump out. We have to demand he pays $1 billion, or any of you guys know how to turn off all the electricity to the White House in Mar-a-Lago? Worst person's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Still ahead on this edition of Countdown, 37 years ago right now, they were getting a press conference ready. They were putting it together for that night, the biggest one in the history of hockey in California. One of the 5 biggest press conferences in the history of sports in Los Angeles. And as a vice president of the Los Angeles Kings hockey team said to me, "It's all your fault, you bastard." He was smiling at me, though, when he said that. I think it was a smile. The story of the greatest story I ever broke and how I did almost nothing to break it. I didn't even phone it in. The sources phoned it in to me. Next, in things I promised not to tell. It's Gretzky Day. First, believe it or not, there's still more new idiots to talk about. The roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's other worst persons in the world. The bronze, worse? Why, it's Secretary Kristi Noem. Kristi Garden Noem. Kristi Murder Your Daughter's Dog Noem. Kristi, I'm keeping an entire industry alive Noem, reacting to her portrayal on South Park. And I'd like to point out that of all the guardrails that have failed us, the one last remaining guardrail, the last line of defense surrounding democracy, may be South Park. Parker and Stone, and that's it. Washington Post, out the window. The courts, out the effing window. CBS News, out the window. NBC, ABC, out the window. Appeasement after appeasement by the university system, the university's out the window. Everybody in it for themselves, like this is France in February of 1939. Not South Park. She's not happy with the portrayal in which I believe they kind of represented her as Michael Palin's movie or Terry Gilliam's movie, Brazil, portrayed one of the characters whose facial work melted one day and they were having problems with facial work and the faces just melted or turned into goo. And they did that with Secretary Noem, who among our Western monuments, the only faces that have had more work than Kristi Noem's are the ones on Mount Rushmore. Anyway, she's complaining. It's so lazy to just constantly make fun of women for how they look, she said to Glenn Beck. That's right, Glenn Beck. I didn't know either. Yeah. So she managed to make her lips move long enough to be able to say, it's so lazy to just constantly make fun of women for how they look. Well, Secretary Noem, we don't just make fun of how you look. We make fun of how you talk because you've had so much work done that you can't move your mouth anymore. And we make fun, Secretary Noem, of the fact that you are a sadist who kills animals for pleasure and shoots puppies. And we make fun of the fact that you're a clown. We make fun of the fact that you wear a variety of action adventure dress-up outfits and pretend to be tough. And go to jails in other countries and stand in front of bunches of nude men in cages like a porn actress. That's what we make fun of. And particularly those dress-up outfits. Corey Lewandowski doll sold separately. Runner-up, worser? Oh, it's Ambassador Mike Huckabee. What's interesting about Mike Huckabee is, of course, his interest in Israel is that it be destroyed, but destroyed the right way. They want, the fundamentalists like this lunatic Huckabee and his daughter Huckster Huckabee and his grandson Huck Huckabee, they want to see a rapture, and for the rapture to happen in this screwball version of the Bible that they have, the Bible being somewhat dubious a source to begin with, but their screwball version of the Bible, it ends with all of the Jews being forcibly converted to screwball Bible religion, whichever one it is, fundamental episca, whatever it is. And you know what happens if you don't get converted if you're Jewish? Yeah, the other way to forcibly convert them and make sure that they're all converted is that you don't have any on earth who aren't converted. And how do you do that? Yeah, well, we know how. People have tried this before. That's Huckabee's interest in Israel. That's why he is the ambassador to Israel, to make sure that when Israel is destroyed, it meets with his biblical approval. The Prime Minister of Great Britain, Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer, of whom I have many doubts, but Sir Keir wrote that the Israeli government's decision to further escalate its offensive in Gaza is wrong, and we urge it to reconsider immediately. He went on about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and made excellent points. He did not go so far as to pull the plug on Israel, as Germany seems to be about to. Huckabee, and again, Huckabee wants to see Israel destroyed and all the Jews in the world forcibly converted one way or the other. Huckabee writes with his false sincerity, so Israel is expected to surrender to Hamas and feed them, even though Israeli hostages are being starved. And by the way, remember, Mike Huckabee became famous by selling people weight loss cures that ultimately, as he proved, don't effing work. Speaking of starving people, did UK surrender to Nazis and drop food to them? Ever heard of Dresden, PM Starmer? That wasn't food you dropped. If you had been PM then, UK would be speaking German. If you're not in the United States, I'd like to point out that I don't know how many of us at the moment are infected by this brain worm or the curse or whatever it is that's caused the mass lowering of IQ and morality in this nation. I don't know if it's 40% or 20%, and they're just real loud. But for those of us who do not have this brain worm and or curse, I'd like to once again apologize on behalf of all of us in real America for things like Mike Huckabee. And we're guilty of not doing enough to stop Mike Huckabee because, bluntly, we're just so goddamn happy he's not in the country at the moment. He's one of our greatest shames. The charlatan Mike Huckabee has any role in the United States government. And to use his phrasing there, he, of course, sought the presidency, ran for president in 2008. Had he gained the presidency, we, in America, we would all already be speaking Russian. Those are the first two nominees, but the winner, the worst, Pam Bondi, our Attorney General, who makes Mike Huckabee seem like Woodrow Wilson, who sounds like she has failed hundreds of auditions as the co-host on late-night TV infomercials. Tell me more about these vegetables, doctor. Apparently, for a long time, we've had a bounty out, $25 million, on the scumbag Maduro, the essentially dictator of Venezuela, and calls himself, I guess, a socialist. He's a scumbag. Well, she's just doubled this. Oh, by the way, I'd just like to point out again, she does not know how to read anything aloud, nor does she have any ability to modulate or control the volume of her voice.
Today, the Department of Justice and State Department are announcing a historic $50 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro. Cocaine is often laced with fentanyl, resulting in the loss and destruction of countless American lives.
Boy, oh boy, Pam Bondi makes Kristi Noem sound like the vintage Kathleen Turner. Am I right, guys? Holy crap. But wait, there's a $50 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Nicolas Maduro? Like where he is? Ooh, Mr. Carter! Information leading to the arrest. He's in Venezuela. So Pam Bondi, send me my $50 million. Pam Bondi. No, really, she's Attorney General. No, of the United States. Hey, I got an idea, Blondie. Why don't you arrest Putin while he's here? Today's worst person in the world. Duh. just after dinner, the phone rang in my office at Channel 5 in L.A. Hi, I'm a viewer. I took a deep breath. You never knew where a call that started like that was going to end up. I just wanted you to know I was out golfing at the Riviera Club this afternoon, and Bruce McNall, the owner of the Kings, well, he just walked through the locker room saying, hey, guys, if you want to buy your season Kings tickets, do it now. I just traded for Wayne Gretzky. The price is going to go up next week. To be polite to the viewer, I asked a few questions, but frankly, the story was pretty stupid. This was the second week of August 1988, and there was a lot of talk that the Edmonton Oilers were going to trade Wayne Gretzky, the most famous player in hockey, and there was nearly as much talk that that trade would send him to us in L.A. But the owner of the Kings just telling passersby at random in a golf clubhouse that he had just made the trade. I was suspicious that I was being pranked. 15 minutes later, my phone rang again. Hi, I'm a big fan of yours and I watch every night. Here we go again. I was just having lunch with a friend of mine out here at the golf course in Bel Air, and like an hour later, freaking Bruce McNall shows up in the dining room and asks for everybody's attention, and he says he's just completed the deal for Wayne Gretzky, and now I was beginning to get actually worried. I was a lame duck as the sports director of Channel 5 in Los Angeles, and for months there had been rumors that I was moving down the street to Channel 2 in Los Angeles. There had been these rumors mostly because I was moving down the street to Channel 2. The deal had been done months earlier. We were going to announce it that week. In fact, as these two guys called in, I had actually been busily packing up my Channel 5 office. My thought now was that the sportscaster at the local NBC station, who had a bit of a substance problem and a nasty temper and a real dislike for the fact that I was nearly as popular as he was setting me up. I had once managed to mislead him into thinking we were about to break a story about a big LA football trade. There was no breaking story because there was no trade, and he had actually mentioned it on the air, having clearly stolen it from me because I was the one who had made it up, and oh, was he furious at me. For all I knew, he wanted to embarrass me 3 weeks before I moved into direct competition with him at 5, 6, and 11. This August 8th, 1988 was in fact my first day back after I had burned all my Channel 5 vacation time, and for all I knew, this guy at NBC had been having his staffers call me for a week with made-up sightings of McNall confirming a Gretzky trade that, frankly, I never believed was going to happen. I mean, not to get too sidetracked here, but one day my phone rang and it was a kid who said, Hi, Mr. Olbermann. I'm sorry, but I'm a finalist to be an intern here at Channel 4 for Fred Rogan. And Mr. Rogan says I can have the spot, but only if I call you up right now and say, I'm sorry, if I call you up and I tell you to go F yourself. The kid did not say F. To his credit, he used his real name, Bill Weir. He later became a sportscaster for the Third network station in L.A., then a correspondent for ABC and now CNN, and I have not let a year go by since without reminding him of his F yourself internship phone call. He said life paid him back by making him work with the guy for several months. Anyway, back to Gretzky night. Two supposed listeners have called to say that Bruce McNall, the owner of the L.A. Kings, is apparently traipsing through golf locker rooms and dining rooms at country clubs to tell them he has completed a trade for the Babe Ruth of hockey, Wayne Gretzky, and they're calling me because they like me. I'm suspicious. And now the phone rings again. This guy was playing golf at the L.A. Country Club. Same story. McNall, buy your Kings tickets now. I just got Gretzky. The next caller had been at yet a fourth club, I think Wilshire or something. If this was a prank, it was a big one, and bluntly, I had begun to admire it. Finally came a fifth call. You don't know me, but I watch you every night. I stumbled onto a story I think you'll want to run tonight. I said, which golf course were you at? And he said, excuse me? I was in my office all day, and so was my missus. She's on the phone with me. She works for Bruce McNall, the Kings. This time I grabbed a pencil. Honey, why don't you take it from here? And she did. She worked in the finance office, and she had literally, she said, just made out a check for $15 million to the owner of the Edmonton Oilers, Peter Pocklington. She said, and the note memo where you write what it's for, I was told to put in Wayne Gretzky. She also had seen the trade contract, identified the players the Kings were going to give up with the $15 million to get Gretzky. They were Jimmy Carson and Martin Gelinas. There were also draft choices, but she didn't know or didn't remember the specifics of which ones. Now breathless, I asked her if I could call her back through the switchboard of the LA Forum where the Kings and McNall's offices were, just to confirm she was who she said she was. She said I could. I did. She was. I believe, in fact, she turned out to be the only person on the McNall financial team that did not get charged with something. So now I went in to talk to my news director and to the producer of our newscast. We were not on until 10 p.m. It was now about 7. They were very excited, and they said that given that I had exact details from a Kings source, plus the 4 witnesses to the owner of the team shooting off his big bazoo at every golf course he could reach, that we should run it, and that we should run it as the lead news story right at the start of the newscast that night, which we did. The Kings would not confirm it, obviously, but as soon as I got off the air with my sportscast, the second time I reported this story, a reporter from the Associated Press was on the phone asking me to read him my script, which he then quoted word for word and put out on their Sports Wire. It was on the back page of the New York Post the next day. My friends called me from New York to say, hey, your sportscast is on the back page of the New York Post along with this big picture of Wayne Gretzky. The leak caused the Kings to move up the announcement of the deal from their original plan, which was Thursday the 11th, to the next night, Tuesday the 9th. A Kings vice president told me at the press conference that the Oilers were enraged because they had wanted to hold off until the 11th because the deadline for their season ticket holders to get their deposits back were Wednesday the 10th. The Kings were nice enough to let me, of all the TV guys, interview Gretzky first live, and I congratulated Wayne on the move, and he actually congratulated me on the scoop, and I said I didn't do anything but answer the phone, and he thought about it for a second and said, pretty much the same for me, and we've been friendly ever since. But the laziest scoop of all time did eventually come back with a sting for me and some payback. A year later, we all submitted our best stories for consideration for the local Emmy for Best TV Sports Reporting for the calendar year 1988. I submitted, surprise, surprise, the Gretzky scoop. The Emmys were always judged by a committee of television types from a different city, so you didn't have that home LA bias. And the guy from NBC who I had first thought was pranking me about the Gretzky story had somehow found out that the Emmys for 1988 would be judged in 1989 in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, I think. So he managed to get an interview with Morgana the Kissing Bandit, who was this scantily clad, buxom woman you may remember, who in the old days of innocence used to bribe her way onto Major League Baseball fields and bounce out onto the plate or the mound, and she'd go and kiss stars like George Brett and Nolan Ryan during games. Morgana Roberts, lived near Columbus, Ohio. So sure enough, at the Emmys the next year, my exclusive report of the trade of hockey's greatest player, Wayne Gretzky, was one of the finalists for the Los Angeles Best TV Sports Reporting Emmy. But in the ceremony, and it was at some old landmark hotel in Pasadena, they showed clips of all the pieces that were finalists and then announced that the winner was Fred Rogan, KNBC, for being chased by Morgana the Kissing Bandit. My agent stood up and booed. My girlfriend punched me in the arm and said, let's get out of here and go drinking. We left. I've done all the damage I can do here. Thank you for listening. Most of our Countdown music was arranged, produced, and performed by Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel, our musical directors of Countdown, and my great thanks to them. It was produced by TKO Brothers. Mr. Ray was on the guitars, bass, and drums. Mr. Chanel handled orchestration and keyboards. Our satirical and pithical musical comments are by the best baseball stadium organist ever, Nancy Faust. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for never saying pithical. The Olbermann theme from ESPN2, written by Mitch Warren Davis, is courtesy of ESPN Inc. That's the sports music. Thank you, ESPN. Other music arranged and performed by the group No Horns Allowed. Thank you, No Horns Allowed. My announcer today was my friend Larry David. Thank you, Larry. Everything else was, as always, my fault. Thank you, me. It's countdown for today, day 1,204 of America held hostage. It only seems like 1,204. It's just 204. But it is just 1,259 days until the scheduled end of Trump's lame duck and lame-brained term, unless he is removed sooner by MAGA and Trumpstein or the actuarial tables, or while they're arresting Putin in Alaska on Friday. Go, go, go. The next scheduled countdown is Thursday. Till then, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck.
The Nobel Peace Prize.